Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name is Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay. I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? We're on break this week, and we're doing some rerun interviews, although this isn't an interview. This was actually, we tried to have it be an interview, and then it turned out not to be an interview. We had invited State Representative Nico Rios on the show. We wanted to talk to him a little bit about he had a resolution that would have declared as that Christ is King in the state of North Dakota, and obviously that's problematic from all sorts of perspectives. But we wanted to have a conversation with him about it. But shortly before the interview, I broke a story about some things he was writing on social media that were just flatly offensive. Talking about basically kicking the quote unquote Jew president of Mexico out of office and having it be like an initiative of the United States. Now, the president of Mexico is of Jewish hair. I think she's ethnically Jewish, but I don't think she practices Jewish religion. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Shouldn't matter at all. But he wrote some offensive things on Twitter. We had him on to interview. He chickened out, and what you're about to hear is Chad and I's reaction to that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to point out here. I mean, if an elected official has the guts to put in a resolution like this, say these things on social media, again, I think as an elected official, he owes the public an explanation of what he's doing. We provided him an opportunity to give that explanation, and he chose not to participate because he didn't think it was news that he was making these offensive comments. And we had some thoughts.
We did. And it's interesting. Rios likes to take pot shots at me, maybe Chad too, on social media. He's certainly outspoken in that perspective, but when given the opportunity to come on and talk to us face to face and have an argument, and I think we've demonstrated in the years of doing this podcast that we're not unfair to people during the interviews. We don't do gotchas. We don't shout at them. We don't talk over them. We ask questions and we let people discuss, and I think they're generally pretty friendly discussions, and he certainly could have come on. We would have treated him fairly. He chose not to. This is our reaction to it. And the reason why we chose this for a rerun interview, I think, is because Representative Rios, I think in a lot of ways, is emblematic of some of the problems in North Dakota politics, which is where we have people who are manifestly unfit to serve in some of these offices who are getting elected.
And the other reason I think it's appropriate right now is we just had the state GOP censure Kelly Armstrong for giving $1,600 in property tax relief, but has been silent on the behavior of Representative Rios.
Censured him for property tax relief, censured him for vetoing a book ban bill. But Representative Rios, who cursed out two officers who were arresting him for driving under the influence, which he ultimately pleaded guilty to, berating them with homophobic slurs and bigoted comments. He doesn't get a censure at all. So here's our reaction. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. Well, we're in the second half of the show, and which would have been an interview with State Representative Nico Rios. We billed it. We put it out there. He agreed to it. But as you heard in the last segment, as we were recording it at 10:24 a.m., the interview was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. Representative Neos texted me and said he's not going to come on our boring little show because we're going to ask him about his social media posts and not his Christ is King resolution. And he doesn't want to. He says he's got more important things to do than chat capital gossip. Honestly, Chad,
I don't know. Does he not know what gossip means? Because literally talking about what he puts on Twitter is not gossip.
Well, I mean, it's a choice that he's made, and I would argue that the two issues are related because he said something about the Jewish heritage of the president of Mexico. I mean, calling her a Jew, which I'm sorry, and that I mean, when I talked to him about that, he defended it, kind of saying, "Well, she is Jewish." Well, yeah. Representative Rios is of Mexican descent, but I think if I went around talking about that Mexican lawmaker, people would think that I might have a problem with people of Mexican descent, which I do not. I don't think that about him. So when you're bringing up her ethnicity like that, like you're insulting her with it, it might make us think that you have something. And then you couple that with the Christ is King resolution, which states a bit of theological dogma that Christians certainly believe, and they have every right to believe that. But he wants to enshrine that, put the weight of the state of North Dakota behind it. And how do you think our Jewish citizens might feel about that? Because they don't believe that. That is not a part of their religious belief. So I think the two things go hand in hand. Chad, I thought he was going to be on. When I didn't, I was kind of expecting this text. But when we got to this morning, I thought, okay, I guess he's going to do it. But I
mean, it's the least surprising thing, as I said earlier, that he bailed on this. I also was hoping that we could have a conversation about his resolution of Christ is King, and then compare it to what his Twitter account says about people who disagree with him, and using a lot of offensive language over and over and over and over again. I'm a Christian. I don't practice as much as I should, or I don't go to church as much as I should, but he's reading a different Bible than I am. If he thinks this is the way, or, maybe he is reading the same Bible and he's just choosing not to have his actions follow the words that he claims. I mean, you can't just say Christ is King. Don't follow any of the teachings around, welcoming all people, or again, the comments he said about Democrats. When I read the comments that people blatantly say like that about Democrats, I mean, wants kids to cut off their genitals. All Democrats want that. I think about my 70-year-old mother, who's a Democrat. Here's what my mom would probably say to all these things. She doesn't agree with anything that he says about Democrats, except for the fact that Democrats don't think he's funny. Because I don't think anybody thinks he's funny. Mike LaFleur did not think he was funny in the articles about the Jew president from Mexico. But it's time again for the House GOP caucus to have some level. You don't have to expel them, right? It doesn't have to be death penalty. If they don't want to go through the Luke Simons thing again, they need to disassociate themselves with this person.
I think expulsion, because this is a little different. The Simon situation was he was harassing people who worked at the Capitol. That's
the Capitol.
That's a workplace issue. This is Representative Rios represents. I don't have any evidence, or I've heard absolutely nothing that he has misbehaved at the Capitol. He just has some very odious political views, and that puts it in a different category. I think what Representative Nathy just told us about the people of District 23 over in the Williston area need to step up to the plate, because your representative is not being an effective representative. He is embarrassing you. I know the good people of District 23, for the most part, don't agree with this. It's on them. All that being said, you're right, Chad, that the Republican caucus doesn't have to have him there, and they could help demonstrate to the good people of District 23 how unwise it is to send somebody like Representative Rios to Williston by removing his committee assignment so that he doesn't have that influence. Now, he has a right to show up and vote on the floor votes and everything else. That's his right. He's a duly elected until the people of District 23 say otherwise. He's a duly elected member of the legislature. But, the Republicans should act.
But they could just say he's also not part of our caucus. He can be a Republican, but I'm Mike LaFleur. I'm sick of answering for this guy. He's not part of us.
Like Republicans in the legislature, think of how nice that would be if the next time Nico Rios says something dumb or does something dumb, you could just say, hey, he's not a part of our caucus. So you need to talk to the people of District 23 about why they keep sending him to Bismarck. And he has not been on the ballot since the DUI arrest or since this latest conflagration. So, but they could recall him. But I just want to make that part clear.
But you think about the conversation we just had with Mike Nathy. You think about the conversations we had with Scott Lauser and Mark Weber last week, where we're having respectful conversations about policy. I don't agree with any of them on everything. Well, one thing we're going to agree on is this stuff is not acceptable for an elected official from either party. These are good folks. The House GOP has some people who, that I wouldn't want to necessarily hang out with. But there's some really great legislators in that caucus, more than not, who are statesmen. We disagree on some things, but I also don't think it's fair. I mean, I'm the one that asked Mike Nathy about this. Mike Nathy shouldn't have to answer for it either. Kelly Armstrong should also call for him to be expelled from, maybe it's the Republican Party, or that kind of thing. But something needs to be done when this guy is making the comments and then he embarrasses himself on the floor. I mean, this week he stood up and talked about a bonus, or maybe it was last week, a bonus for law enforcement. And he stood up and sort of giggled about his history with law enforcement. Listeners will recall his DUI and his racist and homophobic slurs towards the cop. And then he quoted Doug Burgum as saying, in North Dakota, backing the blue is not just a motto, it's a way of life. And he said, I agree with that. Well, again, his actions don't back that up. And the fact he stood up and said, close your eyes and pretend it's somebody else saying this and making a joke of his behavior. Again, this isn't a one-off sort of thing. This is one after another, and it's an embarrassment to the state, and Republicans should be embarrassed to have him part of their party.
And it's not an ideological thing. The things that he's espousing, they're not conservative, they're not liberal, they're not libertarian, they're not any of those things. If you are making an issue about somebody's ethnicity, as he did with the president of Mexico, that's just bigotry. That's not an ideology. That's not a political party. That's not a policy position. It's nothing. If you get arrested for DUI and you pull the "Do you know who I am" card and you try to give them your legislative business card, and then you get mad and you call them a slur for homosexuals, and on the ride to the lockup, you berate the officer who was born in England and had an audible English accent, telling him that his country is being invaded by migrants and immigrants who are raping women and all these things. This is not a policy position. This doesn't have anything to do with your politics. This has to do with your personal integrity and who you are and the fact that you lack it.
But Rob, I would also go back to the comment about Democrats. When Nico Rios gets elected to be a member of the House of Representatives in District 23, he represents all people in District 23. If this is the way he thinks about the minority community of District 23 of Democrats,
there aren't many.
There aren't many, but they exist, and they deserve representation as well. And if this is the way he thinks about a segment of people, that they want children to chop off their genitals, that's just not a fact. And I will again say, you look at somebody like Representative Mike Nathy, who's a representative to a lot of Democrats I know, maybe not a lot, right? It's South Bismarck, but he represents them. If they call him, he's not asking, are you a Democrat or a Republican? He's going to represent his constituents. Nico Rios clearly doesn't have the ability to do that.
Well, it's and the thing too is the things he says about the chopping off the genitals, which is just so, it's such an ugly thing. We have legitimate debates to be had about when we're going forward. And what my point is, it makes those debates harder when that sort of rhetoric comes in, because that is not the conservative position or the Republican position on that issue. It's perfectly legitimate to say, when should people who are minors be allowed to have those surgeries? That's a tough call. There are compelling emotional arguments to make on both sides of it. And I think serious people are trying to figure out, where do we draw the lines? What is the proper amount of government involvement in this process? When the grown-ups are trying to have that debate, and then you have Rios and maybe a few others over on the sidelines talking like that, it makes it harder for us to arrive at policy conclusions that we can all live with and to have a respectful debate all the time. I think about the people, and it's really kind of heartwarming at times to watch some of these committee hearings, and you watch somebody who comes to the podium who clearly doesn't have a lot of experience at the legislature. There's somebody, they got a job, they're not a lobbyist, they're not a professional activist, they're not any of those things. They're just somebody who's got an issue and they want to come to their legislature and they want to talk. And you'll hear the chair how accommodating they are and understanding they are and really working hard to make that person feel welcome. And it's a little bit different when a lobbyist they all know comes up.
Right.
They know the process, and they're not rude to that person, but they know the process.
Hold on. Not always rude to that person.
Okay. Well, not all. Okay. Fair enough. But, they come in, I mean, they know the process. It's a different level. We have a very open system, and it's just out of, again, it's beyond politics, and it's un-North Dakotan. Maybe that's the right way to put it, we have such an open process. And what you just described with Representative Nathy, I would say that's the norm for most people in the legislature, Republican and Democrat. If you're a constituent and you call them with an issue, they'll probably try to help you.
And they will not identify you as a Democrat or Republican. They will identify you as a constituent, right? That's the first thing that they will do. But again, I want to go through this sort of track record of Nico Rios, and he stood up on the back of the blue thing. He also had just this really, really weird line of questioning this week on the personhood bill, where he was asking Carla Rose Hansen if she had a soul, and if there was a scientific breakthrough that said when the soul starts, if she then would, like, I watched that and I was like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Like, beyond the sort of, he's not adding a lot to these and I wanted to ask him about that too. But again, it's a lot of talk, but not a lot of ability to come on and have a conversation about these things.
Think about that. If you're somebody who wants that personhood bill to pass and you support it, then do you want Nico Rios making the arguments for you? Yeah. Because I wouldn't. I would probably want somebody like a Yana Myrdal or something who knows that issue well. And obviously, she's plenty polarizing at times, but she's within the bounds of the normal argument.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
And Nico Rios, called for Kelly Armstrong to be primaried and all those other things. But I'll tell you, at the governor's ball, I saw Nico running around that place and, thirsty for attention from the sitting governor. I wanted to ask him about that too. I mean, it's really easy to be behind your Twitter account and call it gossip when people actually listen to what you say and then talk about what you say. And again, kind of like what I said to the gentleman on Wednesday, Nico probably likes this, that we're talking about him right now.
Yeah. I wanted to ask him what he calls his haircut, because I had
you told me we weren't allowed to say stuff like that.
I've had a lot of people in the audience, like, that's the question they want. Like, what if you went to the barber and asked for that? What's it called? I don't know.
You know what it's called? The Rios.
The Rios. All right, fair enough.
You know who can't do the Rios? This guy, because I don't got anything up here.
I'm not working with enough hair on my head.
I kind of got the reverse Rios. I can grow hair on this anyway.
Insofar that nothing is the opposite of something, then yes, you have the reverse.
Anyway,
I don't. Let's talk about the property tax bill. I think Representative Nathy's right, just because it's that his property tax bill has the governors. I think that's going to be the skeleton they put everything else on. I think that's right. I wanted to ask you, well, two things. I think it's a mistake to put income taxes in there. I think you're just asking for trouble. And again, I'm not against doing it. Make it its own bill. Because this is what we're trying to do with property taxes is complicated enough. So I hope that gets stripped out at some point. Not because I'm against the idea, make it separate. But the other thing is allowing the opt out with the vote. at first blush, I kind of like it. If the voters decide to do this to themselves, will the people? So I don't know. How did you feel about that?
So I think two things. I agree with you that the income tax piece should not have been included in there. I disagree with you. I don't think it should pass on its own. But I think this was Craig Headland, right? I mean, income taxes last session, the previous session, his goal is to get income taxes down to zero. So I don't think we should be all surprised that he sort of amended that in. Nobody's asking for that $50 million. No, like there's very few people who are asking for another $20, $50 off of their income taxes. Again, I think it's 60% of North Dakotans don't pay income taxes already. This will help everybody a little bit, but not a huge. I think that bracket that they would eliminate down to zero, people would save like $112. So it's about the same amount that they took off of the primary tax number, because that went from 15. Was it 15.5 to 14.5? I think. I'm against.
He was making room. I say take it out and put the primary tax.
Put the $100 back in.
Back up.
So I disagree that that should come out. I think if these caps go into effect at 3%, the vast, vast, vast majority of political subs will figure out how to make it work. There's going to be outliers. I mean, we've seen some from Fargo who said, they're going to go bankrupt if this cap goes into place. That
was Cass County was saying that they were.
Oh, it's Cass County. Okay, not Fargo.
They're going to have big deficits. Although Fargo's not for it either.
Yeah, but I don't know how many people will use that 10-year opt-out anyway. So I think putting it in and then seeing how that plays out, but I wouldn't have a problem with that. The other thing that I think was interesting is I think if they went above their cap, not the opt-out, but the above the cap, if they put it on a general election ballot, they have to get 50%, but if they do a special election, you have to get 60%. So, I mean, that's sort of taking the political sub's ability to sort of play fast and loose when these elections are taking place away from them, which I like. I think that we should have as many people as possible voting on things. And if you're not going to, there should be a higher threshold.
Do you think they should even be? I don't know. I mean, should there even be an option to have it outside of a general election?
The only thing I would say is timing. Like, right? I mean, if you have an expense that comes up, like, I don't know enough about like the budget.
We have general election votes every 2 years.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine. I think it helps rhetorically. I don't know that it gets used that much. And if they do get used, I mean, it's going to be tough to ask North Dakotans in just about every part of the state right now to voluntarily vote to get rid of the cap.
Well, right now, right? It might be a different world in 4 years once we start getting that primary tax money rolling.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing we have to think about when we make laws. They're relatively permanent. So, we have to think about it. It's not just legislating for this moment, it's legislating for down the road. I think it's a good thing. I think it gives more flexibility without risking too much flexibility to where we sort of destroy the relief that we're trying to put in place. So I think that's a very good thing. For the most part, I like the amendments they made to the bill coming out of committee. I think the committee did, but for the income tax part, which I think was a tactical mistake. I like the rest of it. I think it's good.
Yeah, I think a couple things that I was going to ask Representative Nathy about, but he answered them before I was able to. I mean, one was thought it was strange that House Finance and Tax had a special meeting on a Thursday when they only meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at 5:00. And, but he mentioned that there's a member who wanted to participate in this. They have to kick those bills out of the committee by Monday when that guy couldn't be there. That member couldn't be there. And then removing the intent language. The original bill had the intent language that said our intent is to get down to zero. I know that there's some legislators, and we talked to Weber and Lauser about this skin in the game sort of thing, that was giving heartburn to some legislators. It doesn't actually do anything because the legislature every 2 years can change it anyway.
That can be a debate for future sessions.
Right. But I tend to agree with you. I think that, the vote was bipartisan in support of this. Both Democrats voted for it. 2 rural Republicans voted against it. I think, again, that's where we're seeing sort of that ag piece pop up a little bit. And I'll be interested in this ag piece when it comes to rural Republicans on the floor and appropriations and other places. I thought Representative Nathan did a really good job of responding to that and pushing back on that criticism. You can tell he's heard it before, so he was ready for it. But yeah, overall, I think the process is moving good. I'm interested if they're going to kill all these other bills now.
Yeah. And part of me thinks they should kill them, and then if there's parts of them that make sense, put them in this bill. Let's make it work. The ag thing, I think, is another thing like the income tax. If we want to do something for the ag property owners, let's do it in a separate bill. But it's not really. This is about primary residence relief. And people who are living on farms, either they already have primary residence relief because they live on the farm and their primary residence, they have the exemption, or if they live in town, then they're going to benefit from this bill. Right? If they live off the farm and they're paying a property tax on a resident because they live in town or they live off away from the farm, then they're going to benefit from this bill. So I think the ag people want to do something specifically about ag land, and I think they're trying to hitch their wagon to this thing because this is the bill that's got the steam. I think we have to have that bill separate. And in my conversation with the governor, I think he's open to it. I mean, I don't think anybody's against doing something along those lines. I think maybe it shouldn't be part of this bill.
So I also think there's cost at factor here, right? I mean, if you try to do everything, it's going to get too expensive to do this property tax relief. Again, like I said when we had Lauser on, I would kind of like that we spread it out a little bit so everybody's getting something. I thought Nathan's response to commercial, if you're giving something to ag land, then don't you have to give something to commercial? What does this look like?
Ag land, really, in a way, it's just another type of commercial land. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Making revenue off the land. It's not like my home. I'm not making any, in residential properties under the governor's bill, and under Representative Lauser's bill, it would be different. But under the governor's bill, if you have rental properties, you're still paying property tax on those.
Right.
Because they're generating revenue.
Yep. Yeah. But again, like we've been saying since during Measure 4, after Measure 4, they're going to do something, and it's going to be something substantial. I don't question that at all anymore.
Let me ask you a crazy question. Neither of us has served in the legislature for a term, so neither of us are qualified to be attorneys. But does that was a joke. Ed,
it was pretty good. It feels like a real narrow audience for that joke, but it landed with me.
If people are understanding, Representative Lori Bansicle has a bill that would allow lawmakers to sit for the bar exam after serving for a term in the legislature.
Oh, by the way, when we talked about that bill before, I said this is the Brandon Pritchard bill, and somebody corrected me and said he wouldn't qualify because he only served 2 years. He only served the end. Yeah, so he wouldn't qualify.
Because that was a new district.
Yep.
Or redrawn district.
Yep.
Anyway. Okay, but I was going to ask, single subject. Does putting an income tax reform in a property tax bill violate single subject?
Well, let's say, because we both think it should be out of this bill, yes, it absolutely violates that. But I'm guessing they would say that. I'm guessing they would say this is all tax
on umbrella of tax.
Right.
I think the problem with that is we don't really know how the courts are going to feel. Like,
right.
I mean, in my mind, income tax is a very different policy area than property tax. So in my mind, that does violate single subject. I mean, one is a property tax bill. The other, how granular are we in single subjects? I don't know that the courts have been all that clear on that.
Yeah, and I think how this plays out, frankly, is we saw last session the House wanted to do something on income taxes. This Senate didn't. Bill will go over to the Senate. They're going to strip the income piece out. Then they're going to pass it. Then we're going to go to a conference committee. And the question will be, Leader LaFleur, Craig Hedlund, people like Mike Nathy, who seem to not really be a fan of the income tax piece, how much do they dig in with the House's position of including some income tax? I would imagine this ends up not being in the bill because it's my understanding they have to find $8 billion still. That's how much the current appropriations bills that are alive are over budget.
And it's just, again, I don't know that voters, I would vote for it. I think it's fine. I just don't think it's a priority right now. Property taxes, let's think a little. You wouldn't want to pass it at all. I would want to pass it, but it's not a priority for me. And I know Representative Nathy, last session, when Governor Burgum came out and was very vocal saying he didn't want to do another property tax buy down, he'd rather do income tax reform, and nothing like because Governor Armstrong's bill is not a buy down because it has the cap attached. But in that context, Representative Nathy was very much against the income tax push. It's not like I think he's like just loves the income tax. I just think Representative Nathy very much prioritizes property tax, which I
Yeah, and
think
I
is
think
the
he
right position right now.
yeah, and Representative Nathan, I mean, knowing the district he represents, I mean, it's homeowners, right? It's a lot of homeowners down there, not a lot of renters necessarily. I can imagine how much he, heard in his neighborhood about property taxes, just sort of knowing Bismarck the way I do.
It really surprised me when Governor Burgum said that. I mean, first of all, I don't know why he was talking about it. He's not the governor anymore. I mean, not that he's not allowed to talk about it, I guess if he wants, but like I don't know what he was trying to do, taking that shot at property tax reform. And also, I just think he's wrong.
Yeah. Well, but then he also had the idea of a $5 million website that would tell property taxpayers who to contact. And then Murdahl introduced the bill and that went down. But I thought that was silly too. Let's put together a website so then Chad Oban's mad about his property taxes and he can log in and find out who to be pissed about. I mean, hit that.
It's not hard to get in touch with your county commission or your
No.
city or whoever. These are very easy people to find. And yes, voters should, if you are not happy about your property taxes, you should be contacting them and respectfully communicating that to them.
Yeah.
And that should have
That's a good use of the public comment time at your local political sub meeting.
not the way it's been used, which by the way, I've been getting a lot of emails from people calling me a money changer. I don't know. In response to some of the thing with Representative Rios, where I've written critically about what he's tweeted, the gentleman who's been abusing the public comment periods over in Dickinson, I am now on some mailing lists for people who think that the Jewish people control everything and all of that, and I just and have apparently concluded that I am Jewish.
So are you Jewish or are you being paid by the Jewish community for your opinions?
It varies, from person to person. Either I'm hiding it and I'm in denial and I'm hiding it, or I'm a goyim who's been bought off. I guess.
Let me ask very pointedly, are either of those things true, Rob? Either of those things true?
No, I was born. My mother's side of the family is Protestant Lutheran, Scandinavian origin, Norwegian. My father's side is agnostic, Germans. I don't know. My dad's side of the family, they were kind of rogues and brigands who
And you're
walked
not
out.
getting paid off though? I mean, I guess there's no way to prove that.
I wish I had more
Yeah,
money.
let me be clear. If anybody wants to pay me off for my opinion, are you listening, George Soros? Go ahead. Checks in the mail. Let's roll.
Over the years, I've been accused of being paid off by this and that. And somebody at one point, this was years and years ago, I saw somewhere where supposedly an oil company had bought me a house somewhere, and they were claiming that this was true and just absolutely. And I jumped in. I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have, because you shouldn't engage with these people. But I jumped in the thread asking them if they knew the address, because
I'd like to swing by.
I'd like to see it. That sounds really nice. No, we do not do pay to play on here. I have one source of income. My employer, Forum Communications, who are I love working for Forum Communications, and that's not me just buttering them up. But no, I mean, the idea that I'm paid off by anybody, no. And I think if you saw our weekly grocery budget, you would know that I am definitely not paid off by anybody, because we don't eat steak nearly as often as I would like.
Well, or as you should to help those cattle producers out around North Dakota.
Heck yeah. They
Yeah.
make a good product. They make a good
Yeah.
product. All right. Wait, I'm sorry that Representative Rios showed up. And by the way, Chad and I talked about this. This wasn't going to be a gotcha interview. Our intent was to really try to explore some of this stuff with him. But I mean, also put him on the spot. He has said some really repugnant things, and I would like to hear his explanations. I realize that was probably going to be uncomfortable for him. Because really saying that there were sort of things he said is not defensible. There's not a good defense for them. I wouldn't want to have to be in the position of defending them either, which, by the way, North Dakota Republicans, maybe put yourselves in a position where you don't have to defend them either. But anyway, I'm sorry that Representative Rios wasn't on. I was
Yep.
looking at that interview. It's too bad he's not. But thank
So,
you.
No, I've got something I want to close with, and I've got a bone to pick with you, Port.
Uh-oh.
So next Wednesday, I'm not going to be here. and there's going to be a guest host sitting in for me. And I heard about this through the grapevine. There was no conversations beforehand. I actually heard about it from our friend Jay Bell, who had been asked to step in, and then she was replaced. Because, by the way, when Jessica has to work, everybody just accepts she has to work. But if I have to work out of state, everybody says I'm on vacation. That doesn't seem fair. But you chose to have Aaron Oban sit in for me. And the text exchange I saw was Aaron saying, well, I don't know if I can do it. And your response was, well, if Chad can do it, anybody can do it.
I stand by it. I'm not sorry. And by the way, you deserve that, because yesterday I was sitting out in my driveway. I called you from my speakerphone in my car. And by way of explaining why I was on speakerphone in my car, I said, I come out early because I get anxious in the house waiting for everybody to get ready. So I go out and sit in the car and wait, because I'm a weirdo and I get places ridiculously early. My wife then gets in the car. I alert you, because I'm a polite person, to the fact that my wife gets in the car. You chose to end the conversation thusly. You said, I'm glad your family finally, with that emphasis, with that inflection in your voice, because I'm glad your family was finally able to come. And then you hung up, and my wife is staring daggers at me. That's great.
So, okay, that's fair. That is complete.
It was a chilly evening in the Port household yesterday, and not because of the weather outside. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I am glad that I had a part in that taking place. And I will just say that Aaron will do a very good job sitting in for me. I will tell you, when I found out, I texted her and said, what the hell is going on? You can't handle me getting any attention, can you? And she responded with, oh, sweetie. So I think there's some truth to it.
Oracle pat on the head.
Yeah. Oh, sweetie. Anyway,
right.
We'll miss J Bell on Wednesday, but I'm sure Aaron's going to do just fine. Sorry to Mrs. Port for any honesty that was thrown into your vehicle last night, but he's anxious. I mean, I've been there, man, where I'm waiting for my family in the car and I am mad. So maybe this will do some good in the long run.
In their defense, part of the problem is me, because I will get places rudely early. Like, I will show up at somebody's house party so stupidly early, I will have to circle the block to kill time so that I could show up and only be politely early. So part of the problem is me. I recognize it.
You know, I don't know why you're getting so defensive. You've said she doesn't listen to this garbage, so she's not going to hear it, right?
Oh, she's standing off screen staring at me right now. So, so I may even be in more trouble now.
Another icy day, icy weekend at the Port Casa.
Let's end this show now, before I end up getting divorced again. All right, here we go. Thank you for listening so much. I appreciate it. We're going to put a pin in it there. And coming up next week, Aaron Oban sitting in for Chad Oban, the better Oban. We have upgraded the Oban.
Good luck getting her not to drop F-bombs if you start talking about the legislative session.
We may need to have a conversation with her beforehand. All right, thank you for listening. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening. If you went to the barber and asked for that, what's it called? I don't know.
You know what it's called? The Rios.
The Rios. All right, fair enough.